All right, legend, short and sharp as we do on a Sunday evening. The 5 things I learnt from round 22, and let me know what you think on these points and if you felt the same way. Firstly, just very, very thankful for some defense coming back into those last 4 games. It was plenty of fun to actually see the clash, the back and forth, the really important plays. You obviously saw Cleary have that game-winning try today, which was awesome. You had the Dogs, with Crichton really having some really important plays there to get them over the top of the Raiders. You saw some nice work from the Sharkies. Obviously, a 14-point lead, but they only kept the Bunnies to 6. And then the Dragons with a nice close win over the Storm. So they're really fun games to watch, and plenty happened obviously on both sides of the ball, and you had some game-breaking plays where in the other games, it was sort of back and forth, and it's like, oh, another try. Oh, this team's well in the lead. Oh, this team might come back. Like, it was all that rather than this was a really important play. So I thought that was great to watch from a footy standpoint, and it wasn't too bad on the fantasy side as well. You saw some good scores. You saw some average scores from players, and you really had to earn some of those those game-breaking plays. And you saw there like an incredible effort from Joe Tarpany to try and get his big bopper, Josh Papali'i's 300th game a win. So another front row forward there with Jared Hargraves and also Josh Papali'i, 2 stalwarts, 2 incredible guns in the front row forward position, notching up 300 games for their clubs there. So incredible stuff from those 2 on that front. Up the Cowboys, by the way, 4-0 up against the Dragons in the WNBL, in the WNRL, the Women's Rugby League, which is awesome. Number 2, the Wars and the Broncos from prelim and the grand final to the bottom 5. Just an absolute shocker. So Wars are in 5th last and Broncos have just entered the bottom 4, which is pretty crazy. So the fall from grace from those 2 sides. And obviously Broncos did lose a couple of players to injury, but I don't think that was the reason why they lost that game. And then you had the Wars go down to the Eels, who are 2nd last right now, and for them to not be able to get the win at home is really, really disappointing with an almost full strength side outside of Torkel Harris. Yes, they had Walker get injured, but the Eels don't have their main playmaker in Mitch Moses. So a couple of tough outings for those 2, and it's been a really tough year. Like Warriors at the beginning of the season, pre-season, even those first few games when they were losing, they were playing great football. They had that awesome month where SJ was killing it, and the team was playing incredibly well as well. They've also had Mitch Barnett have his best season of his career, and they just can't get the job done. And unfortunately for the Broncos, nothing's working right now. They've had, obviously, Reynolds out for a long period of time, and they were looking pretty solid before that. Not amazing, but you can see that defensively, they're not clicking at the moment, and obviously in attack as well. They can't seem to score more than 2 or 3 tries in recent history there as well. So a massive fall from grace from those 2. And just a note there, it does show how difficult it can be for you to go back-to-back really good seasons. And it just puts more and more on the name of Craig Bellamy and the Storm and every single player that's come through that system as to how consistent they can be and how difficult it is to do that. So incredible work from the Storm system, incredible work from the Panthers and what they've been able to achieve. And then a shout out to some of the, obviously Roosters have been consistent enough, sort of 75-80% consistency on a week-to-week base and year-to-year basis. And then a shout out to even teams like the Sharks, who have built this team over the last 3 years, and they've been fairly consistent in that, making the 8 each year and doing good stuff. So you look at the Knights as well, who are in a bit of free fall this year, who are 6th last as well. I was going to mention them, but they obviously didn't make the prelim. So I just wanted to pop those 2 teams in, especially just because we thought they'd be better off this year than they are where they are right now. So not great on that front for those 2. And number 3 there, Sharks and the Dogs. Their gritty wins keep them in the hunt for the top 4. So just really, really want to mention how important those wins were for those 2 sides. And the Dogs had to fight for that one just then against the Raiders at Belmore. So a cracking stadium, a cracking fan base there. They did an awesome job. And the Doggies boys were able to get home over the top of the Raiders, which was awesome for them. And then the Sharks obviously coming up against a Cody Walker-less, Latrell Mitchell-less Rabbitohs team. And no Tavir Totola. They were a little bit decimated in this game. And no Jai Arrow, obviously, as well. So just important to make sure they got that win, because they can be a dangerous side. And they've got dangerous players, obviously, with Jai Gray, with Whiten, and Cam Murray, Keon Kolomatangi. They've got enough good players with Damien Cook, The list goes on, obviously, with those guys. They can all be game breakers, and to keep them to 6 points was a very important effort for the Sharkies there. So keeps them in the 4th and 5th number there on the ladder, which we'll get into when we go through the ladder in a second. But number 4 there, just the Knights refusing to give Ponga the ball. So different to last season. And obviously it all starts with their middles, and actually lost Jacob Saifidi to a calf issue in the pre-game, which doesn't help. But they have not laid a platform all year for Ponga to go to work. There was one opportunity today where they got him in space and he was able to make a line break and get it to Fletcher Sharp there, where they looked likely to get close to the line against a really strong Panthers side. But that's the only opportunity they gave him. And obviously in this type of game against the Panthers, you are going to see Ponga be targeted, and they're so good at doing that on a week-to-week basis against the best matchup. Surprisingly enough, actually Turbo got the better of him a while back in the start of the season. But for the most part, any guns that come in and play against the Panthers, they do seem to struggle when they've got their full team anyway, the Panthers. So you saw that, but they haven't done that at all this year, given Ponga really good footy. There's just a few examples. They got to sort of, third tackle right in the middle of, or left edge / middle to the puck, left to the middle, I should say. And, you'd get out to a forward and they'd look out right, or they wouldn't even look out right. Either way, sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But Ponga was the next receiver and had a little bit of space. And you look at who he's got on, like this is on the right-hand side, was the example I'm going to point out. And on his right, he's got Tyson Frizzell, he's got Dane Gagai, and then obviously Fletcher Sharp on this week there, which is some incredible talent out there and attacking weapons, and just not using him in those ones where you've got sort of he's catching the ball with about 10 meters of space on the defense, and he can do his thing. He's one of the most incredible players in our league, and they're just not giving him ball. And obviously it's a lot to do with the forwards, it's a lot to do with their errors, and it's a lot to do with those halves and directing play around. And with a new halfback this week in Phoenix Crossland to go along with dropping Hastings and obviously playing with Gamble there's a bunch of things that they're just not doing right, and they're not clicking at the moment. And then you had Crossland go off in the back end with that head knock and Cogger coming on. So there's just so many changes in that spine, unfortunately there, whether it's been a fullback with Ponga being out, or in that 9 jersey with Crossland and Brayley playing there. And then you've got the halves that have been interchangeable all season. It's just not working at the moment for the Knights, and they surprisingly were in this game. Panthers were pretty scrappy, to be fair. It was 16-14 of that. No, 14-12, I should say, at that point. And Knights scored, and they're actually in this game, surprisingly. It didn't feel like they were, but when they scored that try, I got to 14-12, and they were absolutely in that game before a Cleary masterclass, as always at the moment. He's gone 3 games in a row with 3 incredible plays or games to get them awesome wins. So good stuff for Panthers, obviously, in Cleary, but just a small shout out for them. And then we move to the ladder. It's going to be our next one on our list before we get into our fantasy tip of the week. And a big thank you to all you guys who have watched all of the content this week. I'm seeing it dying off a little bit, but for those that are here, you're absolute legends, and I appreciate it so much. But the ladder, kicking off from number 1. So Storm obviously lost that game, and it will be an important little clash for them. Lachlan, who comments a lot there, mentioned that that clash in round 26 might be a bit more of an important one, with Storm losing that game. But we'll have to see how the Panthers go and when they decide to rest players as well. Because the Storm now, they obviously lost a 1 game on the Panthers, who are only 1 behind now. And we'll see how important that the rest of the season is for them, and obviously getting that minor premiership as well. But you do see the Storm coming up against the Bunnies next week, who you'd expect to have a nice bounce back against, and hopefully Cody Walker does return. Panthers come up against the Eels there. Roosters have that bye, so a very quick 2 points for them. Sharkies have Titans, which will be a fun clash, actually. Dogs have the Dragons after getting their win. Cowboys have the Broncos. Hopefully they can get a win there in that one. And then the Eagles, obviously back in action, and their draw gets a little bit easier as well. And congrats to the Dragons for a really important win. When I mentioned the gritty teams, Dragons were definitely one of them, and that was a massive win for them. So just need to shout them out. While we're here on the ladder as well, they've snuck up into 8th now and pushed the Dolphins out of it. And the Raiders couldn't get a win there either, which pushed them down to 10th spot, with the Dragons pushing up ahead there. Their differential's not great at minus 90, obviously, but it's all about those wins from here on in. 10 wins and 9 losses for them. so far, and to get that win in Melbourne Storm territory as well, it's absolutely a tremendous effort from the Storm there. So check that, it was in Storm territory. So an incredible win by them to push themselves into that 8 there for sure. So what are you looking at that 8 there? The top 4 is not safe at all. Obviously, Sharkies are a really big win for them. Roosters get the 2 points next week, so they're safe in that top 4 for now. But if the Doggies and the Cowboys can get a win next week and Sharkies lose, that'll potentially put, depending on how much the Sharkies lost by, they could potentially push the Dogs in top 4 into 4th there, which would be amazing. And Cowboys differential is not good enough at the moment. But they do have a bye to come as well, which is going to be very, very helpful for them. And so that top 4 race is well and truly on. And obviously the Eagles, if they can win this slightly easier draw for them, they still have a chance of pushing into that top 4, or at least cementing their spot in the 8. In terms of teams that are looking on the outside looking in, Dolphins and Raiders, as I said, a bit of a tough loss, and they need to have a bounce back next week. We've got the Wars for the Dolphins, and you've obviously got Manly there for the Raiders next week. So that will be 2 very important clashes, and should be 2 very close clashes as well. Shout out to Titans, who are moving up the ladder into 11th now. 8 wins, 11 losses, but they move into 22 points and only 2 wins outside of the 8. So if they win most of their games from here, like they have recently I should say, 4 wins out of their last 5 games, they could be a sneaky one to push into the 8, which is pretty cool for them. And then we've obviously spoken about the Knights, Wars, Broncos, and then the Bunnies in that spot there in 15th, with Eels getting a nice win and pushing themselves further away from that of the Tigers in 17th spot there. So let's move to the fantasy tip for the week. For last week, we mentioned, for most people, I think holding, even with the head knocks, is likely the best play. Otherwise, sort of single trades to guys in form rather than upgrade, downgrade scenario. So just 1 trade or 0 trades was kind of the advice last week. And this week, it has been an interesting week there for sure. Mentioning a lot of the mid-range players actually did well this week, or there's been some injuries. An easy example there is Payne Haas going down injured. So someone like Willison, as a guy that you might be looking to upgrade, was a really good guy to obviously hold and give another week. Also, someone like him, I was thinking during the week before I had to make my trades and my decision on Willison, was just that in that round 24 clash, he'll be the only guy I have on bye. So looping can become really important. As you would have seen this week, a lot of fantasy coaches have 50, 60, like Brendan Hand's got 52, Fainu got 60. You had a lot of these, Talangi got 50. All these guys did really, really well. And most likely you weren't able to take their score if you had a full 21 or even just a 1 looper. You weren't able to get all of the guys that you wanted, which could be tough. So you saw Samuel get 60 this week. He hasn't scored that high before, but he's had games in the 40s and 50 odds and stuff like that, and he could easily get those types of scores. So there's can be some importance with holding and what's the value of a trade, all those types of questions you need to ask yourself heading into the weeks to come. 5 weeks remaining there, round 23 all the way through to 27. And so that injury to Haas just gives Willison and Carrigan and Jensen, all these types of guys, an increased role, an important role in their side there. So it's just saying this demonstrates the importance of being able to hold sometimes where luck has the opportunity to come into your side. Other times you might have made that upgrade this week, Fainu to Haas or something like that, and you could get bitten there on that one. And that's just ridiculous, obviously, because Fainu to Haas is like a 25, 30 point upgrade, but this week it obviously wasn't, and shows there again that sometimes it can be worth holding certain players in certain situations, right? If you're lower on trades in that scenario, if you're on 2 trades, doing that upgrade might not seem like the best. If you had 4 or 5 trades, it definitely seemed like a great move. So sometimes you can get lucky, sometimes you don't, and I think we'll leave it at that heading into the end of round 22. The updates are in, I think, for Panthers game as well. So an extra 3 points for Cleary, I think an extra 4 points for Isaiah Yeo, which is pretty cool, and some low ones across the board with KPP and Ponga and these types of players. So there you go on that front. Thanks so much for being here for the things that I've learnt in round 22. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you're listening on podcast, thanks for doing that one as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, you're an absolute legend as well. So thanks so much, guys. We'll catch you in tomorrow morning's video.